This is your monthly roundup of what's been happening in the watch world. This is your watch news for the month. We've got a couple of positive points, a negative point, and then a whole host of new watches, which is a bit funny because we had a whole month of, not quite a month, we had a whole week of new watches from Watches and Wonders. Kind of feel like everyone gets a bit burnt out with new releases, but there are some pretty epic new releases. Horology and kind of accessible horology. Let's start off with some positive stuff, something fun. This is an Apple TV production called Your Friend's Neighbours. I'm not going to share any spoilers, but essentially it's about a hedge fund manager who sleeps with one of his co-workers, gets fired, is unable to get rehired, and needs cash. His whole group of friends within his neighborhood are epically wealthy, uber rich, and so he resorts to stealing luxury goods. And there's a big focus on watches. It kind of highlights the dirty criminal side of selling watches, but it's quite interesting how geeky they've got with the watches that they've chosen, but also the specifications that they share. It is frustrating. I like the detail that they've got into when they share the specifications of the watches that they look at, but it's also frustrating that the specifications only flash up for a second. It'd be nice for them to kind of really hit home that these are geeky watches. It isn't your typical gold Rolexes. They're playing on Audemars Piguet, Richard Mille, Patek Philippe's. I should note that the pieces in the production are fake, but the show's fake, so it's kind of understandable. These watches are just legitimately rare. The real ones are, so it's kind of understandable that they're not real. But what I find interesting from kind of a watch geeky point of view is, if you think of Wolf of Wall Street, set in the late 80s, early 90s, to kind of hit home the level of luxury and wealth that these guys had, they were wearing gold Tag Heuers and gold Rolexes. And that was perhaps kind of the epitome of wealth back then. Fast forward 30 years to now, to modern day, the epitome of wealth is Patek Philippe, Richard Mille, Audemars Piguet. So it's kind of interesting to see how this view of wealth is up with horology limited edition watches as opposed to just something flashy and gold. It's a really great show. It's been a long time since I've been hooked on a TV program for a while, and that's one thing that I've been hooked on. Check it out on Apple TV. This isn't sponsored by them. Just think it's cool. Now let's talk about tariffs. And I know this isn't a US channel, this is a global channel, but these tariffs are impacting the watch world. Andy Hoffman, Hodinkee's business editor, put out an article looking at the tariffs and how the watch world is responding to them. Donald Trump has imposed a 10% tariff on all Swiss goods. That was initially going to be a 31% tariff, but that's been postponed for 90 days, and who knows what's going to happen. And that's kind of the challenging thing around these tariffs, is because they're constantly changing. It makes it very tricky for businesses to respond to them or plan for them. But major watch brands have responded to the tariffs. Remember that this is just for the US. Rolex, as an average, have increased their prices by 3%. Omega are increasing their prices by an average of 5%. And then the rest of the Swatch groups, we're thinking Blancpain, Longines, Hamilton, Glashütte Original, they're going to increase their prices by, again, an average of 10%. And all of this went into effect on the 1st of May. Andy Hoffman mentioned that the increase in prices isn't just linked to the tariffs, it's to do with the weakening of the US dollar, especially against the Swiss franc. And so even if the tariffs are lifted or cancelled, I wouldn't necessarily expect the prices to be reduced by the same amount that they've gone up. Now, the reason that this is important, and it's not just because the prices have gone up, not just because things are going to be more expensive in the US, it's because it's kind of doubly bad for the watch industry. The watch industry was already struggling before the tariffs were put in place. All the major groups, Swatch Group, LVMH, Richemont, they all published a reduction in sales. And with the US being the largest watch market in the world, roughly around $12.6 billion a year, China is just behind at $12 billion. The fact that the US market is the biggest watch market, but it's then going to become one of the most challenging watch markets, I think it's safe to say that sales within the US are going to decline massively. Now for a bit of good news. London is renowned in the watch world for being just a crime hub. You're really not very safe wearing a nice watch in London. There are professional watch spotters and then gangs that target people with nice watches. But there's been a new task force created, and it's essentially police officers dressed up as wealthy tourists walking around London late at night, pretending to be a little bit tipsy, wearing fake nice watches, trying to become targets. And when they do, they arrest. Now, there's, I guess, 2 positive points from this. 1, there'll be fewer watch criminals on the streets. But 2, it also should put fear in the criminals because they don't know if the person that they're targeting is actually a legitimate wealthy tourist or just a police officer wearing a fake watch. I think that's some good news. Right, let's talk about new watches, and there's been quite a few new watches, and we're going to start off with my favourite. We should probably keep the favourite for last. No, f it, let's just keep the favourite first. This is the new Breguet Classic Subscription 2025. The model was released to celebrate the 250th anniversary of Breguet, which is mind-blowing. I feel like we've had quite a few anniversaries this year, big anniversaries, and it's absolutely crazy to think how long these watch brands have been around. This is an absolutely gorgeous, single-handed, enamel-dialed, stunning watch. Abraham Louis Breguet established himself as a watchmaker back in 1775. And in an attempt to sell more watches and become a bit more commercial and appeal to a larger market, he realized he needed to change his business model. His idea was to create a subscription watch. It's kind of funny to hear that because it feels like every business model nowadays is a subscription model, but it was before his time. The idea was, rather than building a watch and then selling it, the subscription model meant that people who wanted the watch would pay up front 25% of the price. That would allow Breguet to buy the components or buy the materials to make the components, and then they'd pay the rest of the amount when the watch was finished. Over the 30-year lifespan that this watch had, Breguet made over 700 versions of it. Modern Breguet that we have today, have turned this pocket watch idea into a wristwatch, and it is this single-handed enamel dial watch. And I love the fact it's single-handed. The amount of space, the simplicity of it allows all the tiny details, all the stunning typography to really stand out. And then you have the purity of the enamel dial. Just looks absolutely gorgeous. As it is only a single hand, you can still tell the time with relative accuracy. It doesn't just point to which hour it is of the day. You then have this track around the outside that's then segmented into 5, 10, 15, and 30-minute increments. So you can relatively accurately tell the time to an extent. The movement inside it is absolutely gorgeous and it has an amazing 4-day power reserve from a single barrel. The case is made of 18 karat gold. It's 40 millimeters wide, 10.8 millimeters thick, has a water resistance of 30 meters and costs £45,000, which is a huge amount of cash. But when you compare it to the Zenith that I did a video on a couple of weeks ago, the GFJ Caliber 135, that cost £44,000. When you compare that watch to this watch, I kind of feel like that makes this watch a bit of a bargain. Stunning thing. Now for another relatively affordable watch, and I kind of feel like this is affordable horology. This is the new Christopher Ward C12 Loco. This is absolutely incredible for the price. This is less than £4,000. This is powered by Christopher Ward's second in-house movement. It's a manual wind movement that has this free-sprung balance on the front of the watch. The case is 41 millimeters wide. It has 144 hours of power reserve. That's 6 days of power reserve. Frankly, I think this is a crazy good looking watch. I'll be doing a dedicated video on this very soon as well. So hit the subscribe button down there so you don't miss out on that. Next up, we have a new Tudor, another limited edition Tudor. I feel like they do a lot, but I can't remember the last one that they did. Anyway, this is a new limited edition chronograph from Tudor. At Watches and Wonders, they had a display which had a big countdown, and then next to it, they had a watch under a cloth. I had a very strong assumption that this was going to be a new Prince chronograph, something like the Big Block or a re-release of the Big Block, and I was really looking forward to that, but it wasn't that, and so naturally I feel a bit disappointed. Regardless, this is a good looking watch. This watch was launched to celebrate the partnership between Tudor and the Visa Cash App Racing Bull F1 team. The design was inspired by the team's latest livery and it's in full carbon fiber. We have a 42mm case. The bezel itself is also carbon fiber, but the case is actually thinner than the normal stainless steel version of this watch. It's limited to 225 pieces and it costs £6,260. I'm really not a fan of the strap that this thing comes on. I just don't like that style of strap. Luckily, you could swap this strap out for one of the straps that we sell over at barkandjack.com, one of our single piece nylon straps. Pretty much any watch looks better on a single piece nylon strap. check us out over at barkandjack.com. Guys, I've got a whole host of videos lined up that are going to come out soon. Actually, just a little plug for the previous video. I did a video comparing a handful of Explorer 2 style watches, a couple of actual Explorer 2s and then a couple of homage Explorer 2s. I'll put a link in the description down for that. But coming up, I've also got a video on the new Tudor Pelagos Ultra, the Nomos World Timer, the Elliott Brown that I've been test driving for the past month, I think. And then, of course, I've got the video on that Chris Ford C12 Loco coming up. So make sure you subscribe down below and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on any of those videos. Equally, if you have any questions on those watches, then drop those down below and make sure that I answer them for you. Or if you have any recommendations on what watches you want me to check out, again, leave a comment down below and I'll see what I can do. If you want to check out watch straps and watch accessories, jump over to barkandjack.com. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow at barkandjack. And I think that's it. See you guys soon. Take care.